Celeb Savant is a career retrospective type interview focusing on singers, actors, and industry experts. Join Barrett Edelstein now as he dives into the entertainment world.
Nick Keynes is a dynamic force in the music and creative industries, renowned for his visionary leadership and entrepreneurial spirit. As a co-founder of Tileyard, Europe's largest music and technology-focused creative community, Nick has helped transform a once overlooked area of King's Cross, London, into a world-leading hub for hitmakers, game changers, and innovators. Before embarking on this groundbreaking venture, Nick achieved success as the bassist of the 1990s pop band Ultra, selling nearly 500,000 albums. Following the band's journey, he co-founded the production company Goldust, collaborating with prominent artists such as Bryan Adams and Kylie Minogue. In 2011, leveraging his industry experience and passion for fostering creativity, Nick co-established Tileyard. Under his guidance, Tileyard has expanded to encompass over 150,000 square feet, housing more than 200 creative companies, including notable names like Apple Music, Spitfire Audio, and SoundCloud. Nick's commitment to nurturing talent and innovation extends beyond London. In 2012, he spearheaded the development of Tileyard North in Wakefield, located in the north of England, with the aim of replicating the collaborative ecosystem and supporting artists and businesses in the region. Through his unwavering dedication and forward-thinking approach, Nick continues to leave an indelible mark on the creative landscape, empowering established businesses and a new generation of talent to innovate and thrive. Up next on Celeb Savant, we've got Nick Keynes. Where in the world are you and how are you doing?
Oh, nice to see you. Yeah, I'm based in a lovely place called Farnham Common, right on the edge of Burnham Beeches. For those that don't know where that is, it's about a mile from Slough, so which is slightly less exciting. But it's fun. Burnham Beeches is where they filmed Robin Hood, so I'm right next to Sherwood Forest.
Cool. Multiple interesting decades in the entertainment world. So let's start at the beginning. At what age, whether as a child or teenager, did you think, cool, I want to be in this world? And how did that journey progress?
Wow, that's a great question. I started playing guitar probably when I was about 6 or 7. My dad plays guitar. Well, he did play guitar. He's still alive, but doesn't play guitar very often anymore. So I just grew up with music around me. I think my dad was in a band, just a kind of covers band. So he was always very into music. We always listened to music in the house. So I was in bands. I did my first gig at 10. With a couple of my good friends who I'm still close to now, who became much better guitarists than me. So I think through my teens, we always had the dream that we'd be in a band and make it and be successful. So I think it probably was with me. Whilst it was always a pipe dream, though, never something that I really thought would ever happen, but it was certainly something that we aspired to.
And then what were the next steps?
Well, I mean, I suppose for us, it was getting in a band. I mean, I think for me, it's interesting. My kids are sort of mid-teens now, and for us, we were always in bands. I mean, I did my first gig. We were 10 or 11 years old at school. 3 of us played a Shadows song, a song called Apache. So I grew up listening to all that sort of 60s sort of guitar, sort of pop rock. And I think through our teens, we started. I joined a band it was a school band. We started writing our own songs. And at that point, that would have been late 80s, where we were thinking, God, we got some these songs are great. Maybe we can get a record deal, So we dared to dream in our teens, came close to getting a bit of interest probably in our late teens. And then I went to uni and carried on playing in bands, still thinking, wouldn't it be great if we got a deal? Never got a deal. And then I was really lucky. I was older than most actually when I got my break. I was mid-20s. I was out of uni. I was working, still playing in bands for fun, doing all the usual sort of London scene and playing the small venues. And then I got a chance to audition for a band that were signed to East West Records, and they needed a bass player. So their original bass player was no longer in the band. They'd parted company with him, and they'd spent a while trying to find a bassist. And that was I was initially guitar, but then I took up bass in my teens. Best thing I ever did, because nobody wanted to play bass. I knew I auditioned for this role, and 24 hours later they offered me the job.
So you said that you were older than most when you got your break, mid-20s. Why do you think in your mind, I mean, it's a bit different now, potentially, but they say that if you're over a certain age, that means you no longer will potentially make it. Why do you think there's that sort of ageist idea in the entertainment world?
Another good question. I mean, I think you're right. I think now it's a bit different. I think the world is a little bit more. There are maybe more opportunities. It's a bit more diverse. I think back then, to get a deal, you needed to be young. If you're the kind of band that we were, you needed to kind of look half decent. I think we just about scrubbed up okay, the four of us. But so it was kind of there was a certain image you needed to have a certain age. Our audience were kids. And kids sort of, I mean, we were sort of teetering on. I remember going to some of our early gigs. Our fans were sort of in the sort of early teens, and we are sort of mid-20s, and they were sort of throwing themselves at us, and you're sort of thinking, we're a bit old for this, because most of our contemporaries were sort of 18, 19. We sort of toured with a lot of the boy bands in the late 90s, which again we were a playing band. We wrote our own songs, but we ended up supporting Boyzone, for example, which was an experience. I think we felt that we were just on the cusp of being young enough to still be in that type of pop band.
You transitioned to behind sort of the scenes in the creation space, but before we get there, do you ever have that longing feeling of, okay, I want to be back on stage, or is that completely out now?
I think for me, it's interesting. Some people are born to perform and born to be on stage. I don't think that I would be lying if I said I was one of those people. I used to enjoy gigging. The bit that I loved was setting up in a room with your mates, plugging in and making noise together. Always loved that. And so I think for me, I was probably more, I enjoyed the collaboration. I enjoyed playing and making music with people that I was close to. And I think the performance side was, you see some people on stage and they look absolutely natural. I don't think I was ever one of those.
Okay.
Good fun. I mean, I enjoyed gigging, and playing Wembley Arena is quite a buzz. So that was good fun. But do I get an itch to do it now? Probably not. No, I mean, I'm quite happy. I'm happy watching people that are really good at it do their thing and admiring them.
You were part of the band on stage. Then what was the thought process at that point to say, cool, I want to now go behind the scenes and do what you've now been doing for these periods of time?
It's another great question. I think it happened by accident. I think the music industry, we often say, so I'm still in business actually with one of my bandmates. She's going back 25 years. So Michael and I are still in business together. Once you're in this industry, it's quite hard to walk away. I think there's a few industries like that once they've got you, they don't let go. And I think we inevitably sort of had a shelf life as a band. We got dropped. We refused to go away. So we funny enough, we changed our singer, changed the name of the band, and then tried to get another deal, in which we did actually. We got a second record deal, ironically and very, very comically, back with the same label that dropped us. And they didn't realize what they were signing. They had a different manager as well. So that didn't last long. The second go didn't last long. And I think then off the back of that, we thought, well, actually, we're not going to get 3 deals. That's being greedy. So I think at that point, three of John, the drummer as well from the band, we thought, well, maybe we've always written, Michael particularly was a very, very, and still is a great songwriter. We thought, well, let's just try and write songs for other people, for other artists. So we very quickly, the boys were very into production as well, me less so. I was a reluctant producer, never very good. I enjoyed co-writing. I really enjoyed being in a room and writing songs with others, but I wasn't a natural songwriter either. So I think, all of these things transpired to sort of, I had 10 years, a good decade probably, working in that production company. And then we had this opportunity. I had an opportunity to pivot into something slightly different, but still in the music industry, which led to what I do to this day.
Okay, so tell us more about Tileyard.
Yeah, I sort of alluded to that, I suppose, in terms of what it is I do today. So Tileyard is a creative community. It's a hub. It's a physical place. It's about 150,000 square feet of commercial real estate in King's Cross in London. It's owned by my business partner Paul Kemp, who had the foresight to invest in our production company. So lots of serendipity. Mid noughties, we were looking for an investor. I think we were very much, possibly slightly ahead of the curve in terms of we refused to do things the way everyone said you had to do them. And we've always been a bit like that. Yeah, maybe you call it entrepreneurial, maybe it's a bit stubborn, I don't know. But we're always trying to develop acts and trying to do things, putting records out ourselves when nobody was really doing that in the noughties. It was very much still a traditional, get a record deal, work with a label, put the record out. We were trying to be disruptive, I suppose, mainly because nobody wanted to sign any of the stuff we were doing, I think. So we had no alternative but to do it ourselves. And then we met Paul. So we were looking for an investor, and Paul actually ended up investing in the business. And then a couple of years after that, that's where Tileyard, Paul bought Tileyard. Well, he bought the real estate in 2008. Very difficult time for the real estate sector when the banking system collapsed. But it was a tricky time to own an asset like Tileyard. And there was no vision at that time to build a creative sort of business off the back of it. And I suppose the recession kind of forced Paul to sort of think creatively. And that's where we sort of put our heads together. And, Paul, as an investor in a music business, we'd had 15 years in the music industry. We had a very loose chat about, could we potentially bring the music industry to King's Cross? We had all this empty space. Basically, at that point in late 2010, when we started the project, there was about 80% of it was vacant. It was just vacant space, but this fantastic kind of blank canvas real estate space. So I very quickly sort of pivoted into the property world. It was bizarre, really, because still don't really know what I'm doing, but it was just this, for me, it was, we were targeting creatives with a view that, we'll create a space for you. We just need you to effectively commit to being here for a minimum of 2 to 3 years on a lease. So it's very much a sort of landlord-tenant model, but I've never called our clients tenants ever. I don't like that word. I don't feel like I'm a landlord. We're very much about providing a service. Part of that service is we create a space. And within that space, our occupiers do what they do. They're either running a business or creating content, whether it be music or audio. We've got lots of composers. But the idea is that they're a part of a community. And within that community, if you can cluster like-minded people with a similar mindset that are in complementary kind of businesses, we felt the magic might work. Would there be a spin-off benefit? And actually that is very evident. And we call it the magic of Tileyard. So where we've landed now, 12, 13 years into the project, we've got 150, 160 businesses, all based in one location, all separate autonomous businesses, independent companies, from Apple Music to SoundCloud to Pioneer DJ, who make the decks, to Downtown Music, etc., etc. We've got gaming companies. We've got an esports TV channel. We have a brewery as well, which is quite interesting. We make beer on site as well. And then and in the middle of it all, there's about 160 music studios as well, with artists like Noel Gallagher. We had Mark Ronson for many years, and we built these spaces for these clients. They kitted them out with all their own gear, and then made amazing records or great content. We've got composers that make music for some of the biggest TV shows on Netflix, HBO, etc. So we've got this fantastic community of incredible talent, and I'm the guy that just sort of finds them, persuades them to kind of come and join the club, and we all live happily ever after.
You mentioned being a disruptor in an industry. So this is for me an interesting topic, because it's in any person who's thinks outside of the box, is creative, where people tell them you need to do something like this, but it's like, no, we see a different way. So when you went through those times or those spaces of everyone saying, oh, you silly, oh, this won't work, oh, no, doors closed, doors closed, doors closed. How did you keep going and think to yourself, okay, we've all heard all these no's, we've heard all these parrots squawking at us. How do your brain disperse from that noise and know, okay, we're going to focus. It will take a while, but we'll get there?
Being a musician is funny. I think we often talk about, a lot of us at the creative, we are a creative community. We're all creative people at the end of the day. And I think we're very used to tenacity is so important. And also, maybe even a little bit of delusion. We often say that, you look back, I can remember a time back in our days when we're writing songs and we're pitching songs, or we got catalogue and we're saying, hey, but these are number one hit, these are number one records. And our publishers are maybe going, well, we don't really think so. You need to work. And we're saying, how can they not hear it? And then when you look back and listen to some of those tracks now, you think, God, they were right. We were wrong. They're not great. But you need to have resilience. You need to have tenacity. I think a little bit of delusion is good, but not too much. You need to be a realist. At the end of the day, there's nothing worse than than chasing a dream when you don't possess. There are certain elements of talent that you might need, or certain skills or qualities you need. So I often say that it's a mix of those things. And the other thing for me on a personal level, I think being part of a band, I have a lot of clients that are artists, so solo artists, and I always feel that you need to have good people around you, because it's very, very tough. You have some ups, but you have a lot of downs. And I think for me, it was always being in a band, having my mates around me. So when you kind of win and lose together. So if we had a bad day, we just go to the pub and have a beer and sort of drown our sorrows, and then we regroup, we go again tomorrow. It's that, so it's slightly that sport mentality. I'm very into motorsport, actually, and it's that kind of Lewis Hamilton resilience. That's one thing I love about Lewis. It's like, you have a bad race, well, tomorrow we go again. We do it, we win and lose as a team. So I think that's that sort of spirit is something I've really wanted to instill in Tileyard. Whilst people are, everyone's autonomous, and people don't necessarily know everyone the day they move in, but there's an opportunity to get to know people, and there's a support mechanism there. There's people that you can potentially collaborate with, but there's an empathy, and I think that's really important. That if one artist has a bad week, the guy next door knows exactly what it feels like to have a knock, but also when there's a success, we can enjoy success together with one another. So a combination of things I think have helped us through the years. What's been a 25 plus year career now.
Specifically these days with social media, a lot of the fans or observers of the artists, they think that they're always highs because naturally that's what's being posted. They don't see the lows. They don't understand about the lows because they think it's this glamorous life. It's just record label, music videos on stage, blah, blah, blah. But they don't actually realize the in-betweens. So it's what is your take on that, being in the industry and understanding that the fans will not necessarily think or actually believe potentially that there are lows?
It's so true. I mean, I think it was Mick Jagger that said, when the Rolling Stones were 25 years old. I think this is a long time ago now. You're saying, it's been 5 years rock and roll, 20 years traveling and waiting, because a lot of it is that you see the glamour, but a lot of it is very unglamorous. It's hours and hours of sitting around waiting for planes, or in a studio, waiting for your turn to have a go and to track your bass line or your drum track, waiting for the mix, and then waiting for the thing to get released, and then waiting for the success. And so I think there's a lot of that, and it's interesting. Actually, my other love being motorsport, very similar, super glamorous perception of this glamorous lifestyle, but actually the life of anyone in F1, oh my God, 24 races a year now. So it's so much travel. It's living out of a suitcase. I can remember when we got our deal, I literally joined the band. We went on tour, and I remember for 3 months, I literally didn't see anyone. And again, it's back to that, thank God I was doing it in a band with 3 great mates. We had such a good time. So so I was really lucky with that. But you don't see your family, you don't see your friends. And but on the other hand, when you then do see them and you sort of tell them what you've been doing, it's like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I think it's a fight. Yeah, there's some fantastic times. I look back and I feel incredibly privileged. What a great life. But there have been some knocks. I can remember the day we lost our record deal. At the age of 27, you think your career's over. Some people have those knocks much earlier in life. A lot of kids. I think Robbie. I've just seen his documentary. I haven't seen the film yet, but I've seen the doc. He was signed at 16. He's a kid, and so there's sacrifices. I think a lot of young sports people. You look at Andy Murray. The dedication, the sacrifices you need to make. So, and I suppose in social media needs to be about sharing the positive stuff. It's aspirational, isn't it? So there's nothing worse than someone that just moans all day long on social media. You're not going to encourage your fans too much if you're just having a good old moan all day long.
Exactly, that's true. I actually saw Robbie. Robbie was here, so I saw him in concert. he's brilliant. He's so funny. Actually, just a side note.
I've always been a big fan. Actually, I think he's absolutely fantastic. Again, in his prime as well. What a great performer. Born to be on stage.
So I'm an observer of the music charts. So I'd like your observation of this. I've been following the charts since I was like 4 or 5 years old, obviously before the internet. I would listen on the radio every week. I've got all these encyclopedias of the music charts. And what's quite interesting for me is that the UK is quite consistent. So Kylie, she'll have a #1 album. She'll keep on having #1 albums, and she'll place in the charts. But what I find in the USA, and I'm not sure if you may be too separate from the USA because you're based in the UK, but just from your observation, like, for example, very much country and hip hop now for the last 10, 15 years. Before that, Katy Perry would have like 7 number one hits after one after the next. And then now she doesn't even place in the top 150 anymore. It's very much genre based and what's flavor of the moment now, and then forgotten 5 years later. Whereas in the UK and the rest of Europe, it's like, okay, like I said, Kylie or these various artists will consistently be supported and bought. What are your thoughts around that? Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's a hot topic. I mean, again, interesting. Back in our day, you know, God, I'm sounding old, aren't I? You know, what does a win look like? You know, and for us, it was about, you know, you made a record, you had 3, 4, sometimes 5 singles within that body of work,
Yes.
and then those singles, you drop those singles. It was all about getting in the top 40, ideally in the top 10, or number one is the ultimate aspiration. You get a number one record, you know, you're going to sell albums. You tour to sell the album. Everything was about album sales. So we knew what was success. I mean, the negative of that is you get a lot of money spent on you. You drop 2 singles, you don't have a hit, you get dropped. So whereas now it's a very different market. I mean, I think interestingly in the UK, we're not seeing very many UK artists at the moment in the top 40. A lot of American artists, which is really unusual. It's a very interesting moment in time actually. Whereas you look across Europe, there's a lot of the German chart is dominated by German artists. The French chart is dominated by French artists. But we're not seeing that in the UK. So I think a lot of English artists are sort of thinking, blimey, I'm not having success in my own market. Why is that? You know, so I think we're constantly analysing. I think it's a moment in time. I think again, it will probably evolve. A lot of it probably is around the major labels, you know, what their focus is. I think the UK labels seem to be very much focusing on catalogue at the moment. So they're not signing nearly as many artists. So a lot of the new releasing artists are independent, plugging into label services. And we have a number of those options at Tileyard, interestingly. So Tileyard is very much geared around artists making their records and then putting their records out. And they have lots of routes to market through businesses that are based within our community. So I think it's a really interesting time. And I think a lot of artists now don't quite know how to measure success. You know, it's obviously streaming has changed things immeasurably. I think certain types of tracks stream better than others. So it's really hard for bands because they don't seem to get the big streaming numbers. So and then you sort of think, well, maybe the charts aren't quite so relevant. Maybe it's more about direct to fan and it's the fan business we're now in, you know, and it's all about fandom and the super fan. And because ultimately this all boils down to business and making money. You know, artists need to get monetized for their works and build successful careers. But I think it is fascinating. And I mean, you could probably tell me a lot more than I know, but I certainly observe it from people. You know, we've got a lot of current artists in our community and a lot of emerging talent as well. So it's a hot topic.
I love me a CD. I still budget for my CDs every month because for me, it's a journey of choice, the listening from song 1 to whatever number. I've loved the unpacking of the booklet, all those different elements of that experience. I'm sure if you are aware that vinyls are a massive comeback, even CDs, like I was reading last year in the UK, there's a basket of products that they gauge on exchanges. Obviously, there has to be a certain amount of exchanges for that product to be in the basket for tax purposes. And because of the upsurge of CDs again, that product is now in the basket. Also last year, a vinyl factory in Asia reopened, had been closed for 50 years. And the research is showing that it's the teenagers, the early 20s that are diving into this physical world, not necessarily the older nostalgic people. And then again, as you referenced, we've got these streaming platforms. What are your observations beyond what we just mentioned on the landscape at the moment?
Yeah, very true. And I looked at some stats recently as well, just looking at growing markets, you know, and I think it's, again, for artists, it's really important. And we've got 2 clients spring to mind. One is a fantastic label called Gearbox Records, which is a vinyl-led label. Lots of archive jazz, but they also do a bit of spoken word and some electronica, but a very niche, fantastically cool niche label that is actually becoming more mainstream, you know, and they're putting some really, really fantastic records out. It's the tactility of vinyl is lovely, but also it sounds fantastic.
Yes,
There really is a sonic sort of premium experience. Listen, in fact, Daryl, the founder of Gearbox, comes up with some great sound bites, but he said, we hear music all the time, but we very rarely listen to it.
Exactly.
And the idea of taking a record out of a sleeve and putting it on and putting the needle on, and you sit down and you listen to it. It's a wonderful experience. So I think there's a place for both. I think streaming is brilliant when you're on the move, and it's fantastic that you can access millions of tracks. It's incredible. But there's nothing better than putting a record on. I listen to cassettes. I've got so many old archive, demos from bands I used to be in that I get very nostalgic listening to all these old demos. And so I've got a whole bunch of cassettes and CDs as well. I just think there's a place for all of it. It's a bit like, I guess you're reading a book, the tactility of reading a book. The book market is bigger than ever. And I'd love to see the physical music industry grow a lot more, because I think kids really, they dig it.
So I love this game. I know if I had to ask you this question in 2 minutes, 10 years, 50 hours, I know your answer will be different every time. I recognize that and I understand that. I'm not saying favorite, I'm saying top of mind. If you had to push play to 5 artists once you finish this conversation, and if you can think of specific songs, who would those 5 artists be? And if you can think of songs, what would those songs be?
It's a great one. Oh, I've always been a massive Beatles fan, and there's so many to choose from, aren't there? Eleanor Rigby's always moved me. I think it's just a great piece of music, so that would be one. Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, great album. I remember that really spoke to me when it came out. Oh, what song? Under the Bridge. Yeah, but they're all great. I love the whole album. I've got to pick a Dave Lee Roth song. I was a massive Dave Lee fan in the 80s. Ladies' Night in Buffalo on his Eden and Smile album. Stones. Keyboard player in the Stones, Matt Clifford, is a client, actually, one of my first clients at Tileyard, and he's still there. So I was always a fan, but I'm an even bigger fan now because of Matt. Gimme Shelter, always loved that song. Top of mind, I'm going to say The Shadows, because that was my first influence as a kid. Loved Hank Marvin, not the coolest, but there was just something and went to see The Shadows many times before I even became a teenager with my dad. So let's go for Apache, the first song I ever played in a band in front of an audience.
Lovely. Nice mix there. So, Nick, the podcast is listened to throughout the world. As a final message, what would you like to say?
Well, I want to say thanks for having me on. It's a real honor, actually. In fact, funny enough, I'm launching my own podcast. It's a Tileyard podcast in next month. So but I've never been a guest on one before. So I'm soon to be a host, but this is my first time as a guest on a podcast. So really appreciate that. I just want to say, so thanks for having me on. And I hope people found the story interesting and entertaining. And if you want to check out Tileyard, check our socials, check the website, tileyard.co.uk. Check us out, because it's a cool place with some fantastic people doing some amazing things.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Celeb Savant. Please follow Barrett on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Celeb Savant. That's CelebSavant.